Well, thanks everyone. I know it's been, I'm at the end, bat and clean up as they say, so I'll try to keep brief too. I know we're a little bit tight. So I appreciate you all of you staying to hear what I've got to say. I am, as Jerry said, I'm the Canadian Territory Manager for Revizto. I am a Maritimer. I grew up in New Brunswick and on the Bay of Fundy, so I am very familiar with, I wanted to start with something that fit the tide motif of this event, and thought the ebb and flow of change was probably a good thing to talk about. So right off the bat, I'm going to, in front of me here is or in back of me is a picture of a road that goes to an island off the coast of St. Andrews. It's called Minister's Island, and I don't know if anyone's been to that charming little area of New Brunswick. But this is a very popular tourist destination, and this is a 1 kilometer road that is available when the Bay of Fundy tide goes low. And when the tide comes high, hopefully you planned your day right and you're not on the island, because you're not going to get back because it's entirely submerged. So I thought of the fact that generally when we're talking about tides and change, we're talking about something where it's very predictable. There's going to be change every single day, and you can actually chart the course of when that change is going to be. But as we know from anyone who's spent any time in the Maritimes, is that weather can change that. There's an unpredictable nature of change that you might see with fogs and snowstorms and hurricanes coming up, and it's one of those things with weather in the Maritimes. It's a question of when rather than if. And when it comes to working on a BIM project, it's very, very similar. You know out of the gate that when you deal with a project in BIM, that you're going to be dealing with changes in the hundreds or in the thousands, depending on the nature of the project. And many of those changes are going to be unpredictable, but you know that you have to find a way to prepare for it. So I've been around Revit for a long time. I started off in the Autodesk channel. When I first started was the same year that Autodesk acquired Revit. Autodesk has had Revit for 15 years. Revit's not anything new anymore. It's been around for a very long time, and in this 15 years we've seen a lot of growth of BIM. We've seen it be the way that projects are being done. And one of the things about BIM, and I'm not going to say that Revit's the only BIM, but certainly when Autodesk acquired Revit, all of a sudden there are a whole group of AutoCAD users that had a very easy path to bring Revit into their organization. So Revit became the common BIM very quickly, and there was this vision of a holistic BIM that was discussed early on at that time. But one of the things, getting back to that idea of change, is that when you're working in parametrics, when you're working with a BIM model and you have that ability to make a change in 3D and see that change immediately propagated in 2D, to see every elevation updated, to see every schedule updated, well, we now have got a tool that responds better to change. And that certainly has been addressed things that we didn't have in the BIM in the BIM workplace before that time. But what we've seen over the years of working in BIM is, as we started working towards the idea of well, like I referred to as holistic BIM, of multiple players coming together and working on a coordinated model, then what we've seen is more and more information put in this model, and this model's accuracy becoming more significant, that people are able to take material takeoffs and do energy analysis that's very accurate. But what we've done is we kind of created this center hub at the design level where all the BIM information went in, and then some people have been left to be excluded in the process. What I mean by that is, if you don't know how to use Revit, if you don't know how to use Navisworks, and I've got many clients across the country that a partner has been with his firm for years. He started hand drafting. He learned some AutoCAD early on. When Revit came in, that was no longer a test he wanted to go through. But here is a guy who is the liaison between the project and the owner. And he is being kept at an arm's length from the BIM data. What we're seeing on the other end is, again, all the architects and engineers and designers are working on this comprehensive BIM model, but then we see the project managers and the site coordinators who are going out on site with PDFs and 2D sheets, and they're trying to coordinate, again, this complex, comprehensive process of turning this building into a real thing. And they get on site and they're having to refer to 2D to make that decision, even though all this effort has been made to put this data-rich model together. And it's been looked over and coordinated between all these players, and then on site, this data is back down to 2D. So when this area of the project is being built, the 2D sheet may not represent that bend or that twist or that complexity that's in there. So we've seen coordinated BIM, we've seen how that can resolve things, but we're seeing key parts of this building process left out. So what we do with Revizto is we're a real-time 3D model-based tracking software. So we use a game engine to export your Revit model or your AutoCAD model or your Rhino model or your SketchUp model into Revizto, and then from there we use the cloud to sync it back to local instances of this model so that all of the players on the team can look at this project in 2D, in 3D, or in virtual reality. They're able to share it among their team members, they're able to collaborate, and they're able to identify issues, whether they identify issues on their desktop in the office, or whether they identify those issues on site with an iPad. So when you look right now at this diagram here, I'm going to just show you a couple of slides about Revizto, then I'm going to actually show you the software in action. But typically what we find with the projects that we work with is that we might have a GC who has a federated model in Navisworks, or perhaps we've got an architect who is responsible for maintaining the full Revit model in his organization, or perhaps it's just somebody is still using full AutoCAD. Well, from here they can then export it out to Revizto, and then once it's in Revizto, this can be used to manage your issue tracking, coordinate it with the cloud, and be able to use it for presenting, or to be able to use it for issue tracking, or to be able to use it to help guide you through the process of correcting things at the design stage. And I'll show you what I mean by that with the software right now. Our goal is to hit this middle area that deals with everything related to the design review of the project, to give the team tools to be able to understand what's happening at that point. So I'm going to bring us into a little program that you guys will recognize called Revit, and I know about what I'm going to show you here, so don't think I'm going to get into a complex Revit discussion here. But when you install Revizto on your computer, if you have Revit or Navisworks or AutoCAD, you can choose to opt to bring a plugin in that lets you export this or mark issues straight out of your Revit or your Navisworks. So once you do that, you can go into Revizto, and inside of Revizto, you have a version that nobody's going to confuse this with Enscape or 3D Studio Max, but it is a pretty reasonable graphic representation of the project based on the materials that you have inside your Revit model that you exported out. So again, I'm going to reiterate that once I've exported this out from Revit, Revizto is a local application, and you have a local cache version of it. The reason that's important is that if you, for instance, are down in the parking level 4 and you have issues related to this project that you're trying to mark up, those issues are going to go into this project, and as soon as you're on the web, it's going to sync up. So when you've exported out from Revit, you can opt to bring the 2D sheets in. So I've got all the 2D sheets in. So this is the same user interface whether I'm on a desktop or whether I'm on an iPad. And on these 2D, on the 2D, you can see a bunch of issues that are marked up on this project. So with one view, I can get a sense of what issues are here. And you might look at this and think to yourself, well, okay, this looks like a PDF of the project, Dan. I can do that with my PDF viewer. Well, except for the fact that all of these links that are coming from Revit are still here and intact and will take me to those specific links. And these are all coordinated to the X, Y, and Z in the project in 3D. So when I look at this 2D right here, Revizto automatically creates this green icon in every one of these 2D sheets. When I double click this, it shows me how that 2D sheet is associated with the 3D model. So the reason I point this out is that in the case of that principal I was talking about earlier, that site coordinator who might be uncomfortable working in 3D, this is a non-destructive 3D model. Nobody's going to break the project or the BIM model working in this. The user interface is easy. It can be done locally and synced to the web, and somebody can navigate through 2D and be able to pull themselves into 3D. And we found that in many of our clients' cases, this has given them the opportunity to make the transition to 3D when they've been otherwise uncomfortable with that idea. So I had an architectural client that just came on Revizto a month ago, and the principal of the firm was able to, after 2 hours of going over the project in Revista, was able to take the project out to visit an owner in Calgary, and they were able to go through, for the first time ever, bring 3D and 2D and go over it with the owner. So here we've got the guy who understands the goals of the owners, understands how the building is being constructed, and he finally, for the first time, he was able to come back and so excited that he was able to share the 3D with the customer and talk to them about it. So that is one of the key parts about this easy to use 3D modeling software. So I'm going to go back in here and I talked to you a little bit about 2D and 3D, and there's some tools to navigate here by the room tags and by 2D elevations in here as well. So, and these 2D sheets, I can jump to 3D and I can go to any spot inside of the project with a double click and be able to find my way into the project. Again, we find with people who haven't had much technical background, that's very exciting. But the core reason that our clients are using Revizto has to do with the fact that we have a real-time issue tracker. So whenever I have an issue that I've identified in 2D or 3D on the project, it's marked in the issue tracker, and every bit of communication associated with that issue is in there. So when I look at this issue, let me go down to this particular door issue. And so every bit of communication, additional markups are all along the issue tracker here, and I can assign them assign how far in the status they are to a specific person, assign it with a deadline. I can also use custom tags to be able to apply to this, that I can then use the filters in the software to find the issues that are, say, related to me. Or I can do, there's a real-time dashboard and reporting that I can refer to. But here's how it applies to designers that are using Revizto. So the project is working, the team's working on it, they start to have markups on this, and as soon as somebody assigns this to me, if I've got Revizto open, I automatically get a notification. I also can get an email. I've got a series of controls over how I get communicated with that. So I see this issue, and let's say I'm Greg and I'm charged with having to solve that issue. When I double click it in the issue tracker and I go into my Revit, it creates a scope box and takes me to the exact instance of that issue in Revit. So if you consider that, in talking to one of my clients, that they were early on in the DD stage of their project, they already had 700 issues. When you consider that Revizto can be used to navigate to every one of these issues and take you to the exact instance And then you can then turn that into a working view and be able to go in there and resolve that issue straight out of your Revit, and then from there go back to Revizto, and now I'm going to indicate, okay, I went into Revit, I saw that issue, I mark it as solved, and now my VDC manager, my BIM manager, is going to bring all of these solved issues up, and he's going to check them against the model. So part of that checking against the model is when you export out from Revit to Revizto, you also have a scheduler there. So you can have that scheduler mirror how often you're updating your Revit model. So every morning your team is working with the most up-to-date version of this. So we've talked a little bit about how it works for the partners that are working out of Revizto now, and from the designers being able to work in the 3D and X, Y, and Z. I'm going to talk a little bit about that dashboard that I was talking about. So this project has a real-time dashboard. As soon as a change is made in the project, it's reflected immediately in this dashboard. What we found in terms of the real workflow we see with our customers is a VDC manager or partner will probably go to this dashboard more often than they will open up a model in Revizto looking at specific things. Because I can go in here, and if I look at this and I see this is plumbing issues, and 7 of these issues are under me, but I want to see proportionately how many of these issues are in here. I have the ability to drill down and bring up real charts that reflect in real time what is going on in the project. We found that this has been equally as well received by our clients as working in Revizto is. It allows them the opportunity to be able to, in a glance, see what's going on in the project. So we also support the ability to export all of our sheets with the 2D markups in them. So when I look at these markups here, I can export this sheet or any number of sheets out into PDF straight out of Revizto as well. So you've got the ability to be able to coordinate with people that maybe aren't invited to your Revizto project. So with the people who are invited to your Revizto project, you can see that you've got a number of options to be able to give them permissions to be able to get into your project and be able to see and manipulate from the project. One other thing I want to point out about the 2D that I didn't point out, let's go to one of these issues for a second, and this issue is in the blue, right here in this spot. It was identified in 3D, so I can look at what the actual issue is here. I can go into the 3D and navigate it. Now keep in mind that these tools to navigate and explore in 3D, these are tools that if you use Revit and Navisworks every day, it may seem like old hat to you. But when you consider the fact that everybody who's working on the project for issue coordination finally has an ability to explore this in 3D, they can also look in the 2D that they're comfortable with. But additionally, if you look at this mini icon next to the 2D, this will show me every other 2D sheet that particular issue is on as well. Because all of these issues sit in the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So in other words, if I as an architect identify an issue related to a ceiling, let's say, and I've got a mechanical firm and electrical firms that also have 2D sheets related to the work they have to do, they're going to see this issue show up on their sheet in Revizto as well, so they can predict any issues that might impact on their workflow as well. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.